I have my reasons. How could I hate the Young Justice TV show? It looks cool, the characters are interesting, and the story is good, at least for the first season or two. The problem is, it's not Young Justice. It's a rebranded Teen Titans. The Young Justice cartoon has Dick Grayson as Robin, Kid Flash, Aqualad, Superboy, Miss Martian, and Artemis as its starting lineup. The Young Justice comics have Superboy, Tim Drake as Robin, Wonder Girl, Arrowhead, Secret, and Impulse as its starting lineup. Dick Grayson led the Teen Titans in his teens. Young Justice didn't exist until he was already in his 20s as Nightwing. Dick, Kid Flash, and Aqualad were original members of the original Teen Titans lineup. Miss Martian didn't join until Young Justice had moved on to being the Teen Titans, and before the New 52, Artemis wasn't even a hero. She was a villain. In the New 52, she joined and died helping the Teen Titans. Plus, Tim and Cassie don't start dating until after Superboy died in the Teen Titans. So, the dots are connecting. But you may wonder, what exactly is the problem? Tim Drake is an interesting and complex character that is sidelined as a hero in a show about the team he created. Why? Because Dick Grayson is more recognizable to the general audience. Because of the 2003 Teen Titans and every other Batman show slash movie. The studio wanted to coast off of Dick's familiarity instead of respecting Tim and allowing the audience to connect to him. You know, like Teen Titans did for Dick. The point of making a show about a team that the average couch potato isn't familiar with is to introduce them to something new. Something they're not familiar with. But studios are afraid to try anything new, and the familiar has a better financial guarantee, which is why we've been inundated with sequels, reboots, and nostalgia bait for the last several years. Young Justice wasn't dark. It did handle dark topics, but it itself was never dark. Studios think that dark and dramatic is what appeals to the teenage audience. It's not in the long run. Teenagers are children who think they're adults, the age of rebellion as they're trying to figure out who and what they are. So they enjoy deep, meaningful, and chaotic stories. Not pointless drama or inane jokes and scenes so dark you can't see what's happening. Even adults find that freaking annoying. Tim isn't respected as his own character in the new Batman Adventures because they give him 2/3 of Jason's backstory and personality because the producers were afraid that people hated Jason. Either Tim should have had his own story told, or they should have said, "This is Jason," and took the chance, having it and playing out the Joker Jr. storyline. I watched some episodes from the show years ago because Jason Marsden voiced Impulse. I then started reading the Young Justice comics, and guess what? It had a wonderful story, the characters were fun and relatable, and I had a good balance of humor and drama. Impulse became my favorite, so I read all of his comics. I loved it, and it ruined what little I actually liked about the show. I never read the comics, and the show itself ruined the show for me. I'm going to compare the core three characters, Tim, Superboy, and Impulse, from both the show and the comics. In the comics, the three of them are best friends. They created Young Justice so they could hang out and have fun saving the world. It also gave them the opportunity to just be themselves and act their age. Red Tornado even refers to them as the id, ego, and superego. The show makes Superboy a main member while making Tim and Impulse secondary characters, taking that close-knit friendship and burying it under a mountain, never to see the light of day. Superboy's character in the show was covered really well by Implicity Pretentious. Implicity. I'm just butchering this word. Pretentious. Go watch his video if you want to get a deeper look into his character. But he did. But he didn't cover the fact that he is the born sexy yesterday trope with added anger issues. Comic Superboy is a very cocky, loud, and brash teenager who loves messing with his friends but tends to say the first thing that pops into his head. His insecurities are more about the fact that he's afraid of ending up alone rather than being Superman's clone. Impulse in the show is slower. His backstory and attitude line up with the New 52, not actually Bart, than anything else. He's more concerned with altering the future than living up to the Flash legacy. Bart in the comics is a sweet but dumb lovable ball of ADHD. He got sent by his grandma Iris to the past because his own superpowers, his own super speed was killing him. Wally fixed it, but had a hard time connecting with the hyperactive 3-year-old going on 13. So he was placed with Max Mercury to learn how to be normal. He idolizes his Grandpa Barry and wants to be just like him, but has trouble thinking before he acts, it being a huge issue for him. Tim in the show is there. Everything that makes him his own Robin, like the costume and intelligence, were given to Dick. Dick is a tactician with a high kinetic intelligence, while Tim is a strategist with a comprehensive intelligence. Computer hacking was never either of their strong suits. That was Barbara's thing. Even the 2003 Teen Titans got this right by making Cyborg be the computer tech guy. Tim's a genius at detective work, information gathering, and coming up with insane plans that has made Ra's al Ghul's head spin. Batman even stated that Tim is smarter than him and Alfred. Tim was often left alone by his parents for weeks on end for most of his childhood before deciding to stalk Batman and force him to make him a Robin. He's driven by empathy, tending to act as the adult in the room, and tries to be a serious leader even if he spends 75% of his time doing this. He loves his friends even when they lead him into Looney Tune-esque adventures. The group gives him an emotional freedom that he doesn't have anywhere else. Now I want to rant about the costumes and how that disrespects the characters. The first instance of this costume in an animated setting was in Batman the Animated Series. If you had never read the comics and I showed you this picture, you would assume that this is Dick Grayson. The reason for this is because this costume is more respectable and cooler looking, and studios didn't want to be fussed at by angry parents demanding to know why their kid was watching a young boy swinging around in fish-scale undies. If they did that, if all they did was take the original costume and give him pants, then it would have been respectful to the audience. To Dick, as the costume was based on his parents. The only time and Tim by recognizing his individual style. The only time you see Dick's original costume is in less serious cartoons like Batman the Brave and the Bold. Each of Tim's costumes throughout the comics holds significant meaning to his character because each change represents a major change in his life. The first costume he wore was Jason's in order to prove his point that Batman needed a Robin. The second was a gift from Batman, both as a form of acceptance and to mentally and emotionally differentiate between Jason and Tim. The third was the red and black. Tim wore this to mourn the death of Superboy because he blamed himself for not being there to save him. He started wearing this during his Teen Titans run. The next was the Red Robin costume. This was a costume worn by Jason, given to him by Earth 51's Batman. Tim had lost his parents, Superboy, Impulse, Batman, and his title, calling himself the Robin who failed. By giving Dick Tim's costume, it takes out the significance of why Tim wears the red and black. It's disrespectful to both characters. The fact that this show gives them both the red and black makes it even worse. The weapons and fighting styles also matter. I'll show you. Dick's fighting method has always been reflective of his acrobatic background with lots of flips and kicks. Tim's is reflective of the many teachers he's had, Batman, Lady Shiva, Dick, etc. His weapon, the bow staff, is what he earned by training with Lady Shiva, not Batman.
Batman never trained with a bow staff.
Tim has always had to rely on his intelligence because he knows that he'll never be as physically skilled as everyone else. The staff, along with the costume, keeps being given to Dick. Tim's reason for the bow staff is because he's tiny. He can't do anything. He needs the leverage and distance. Dick doesn't. By giving it to Dick, you're actually taking away what makes each of them so unique in the Bat family. The only thing I've seen that does their fighting styles right is the Batman Unlimited series.
We now interrupt this wonderful program to give you an ad. This business was started by a homeless man, and he is now using the money to help other homeless people out of poverty. On his site, he sells products that he puts QR codes on that take you to other small businesses. So, curious on what the little guy's selling or want to do your part helping the homeless? Just go to bonfire.com/store/live-to-inspire/ or click the link in the description. Now, back to our regularly scheduled program.
The core themes and tone throughout the comics and show are completely different. The tone of the show is dark, brooding, and serious. Because again, that's what studios think teens want. Even the lighting is dark and more lighthearted scenes. The show is reflective of the studio, not the audience. Its teenage superheroes are from an outside perspective that was written by people who've forgotten what being a teenager feels like. Which is very reflective in the dialogue. Very, very bad dialogue. The tone of the comics feels more like the tone of the 2003 Teen Titans. It was silly and lighthearted until the story needed to be serious. It was written like the writers tried to reflect their audience and write teenagers from an inside perspective. The art was very 90s, but that added to its charm. I would love to watch a Young Justice show in the comics art style. It had been over 20 years since the Teen Titans aired, and people are still gushing over it. They look back on it fondly, but acknowledge its flaws. You really think people would do the same for the Young Justice show? My personal experience? They did not. Past season 3. The theme of the show is following your own path. The first episode has the entire Justice League show up to reprimand them for acting recklessly. They then spend their character arcs trying to prove they can be heroes outside of their mentors. Superboy spends his arc trying to figure out who he is outside of being Superman's clone, while Wally, he struggles with not being as fast as Barry. And Dick is trying to get out from Bruce's shadow, which is what Dick was doing in the Teen Titans show. The theme of the comics is about being isolated by legacy. The first time Superboy, Tim, and Impulse team up was in the Justice League World Without Grown-Ups comics. They saved the world from a kid with the power to alter reality, and Batman's response was, "Good job, Tim. You can go hang out with your super friends." Superboy isn't looking for Superman's approval, but fears ending up alone because he doesn't age, unlike everyone else, and plays Peter Pan to cover up how he feels. Impulse grew up in isolation and is now stuck in a world he doesn't understand, one that wants him to slow down. He idolizes his grandpa Barry, but has trouble connecting to the only family he has. Tim lives with an emotionally abusive father that he wants to connect with but can't, and acts as a moral compass for an emotionally repressed man-child in a batsuit. He can't share what he's been dealing with any of his civilian friends and pretends to be okay. Young Justice is the only outlet for him to be a hero and be encouraged to act his age. Even the girls each have their own stories that also follow this pattern. Arrowette's mom is living her dream of being a superhero through her, making it hard for her to figure out who she is. Secret was murdered by her brother, and now she has the power to scare people to death. That power makes it hard for her to connect with others, and she doesn't have anywhere else to go. She appears in one episode in the dumbest way possible with all the fanfic tropes. And Wonder Girl has to deal with her own overprotective mom while being under Wonder Woman, also being Wonder Woman's apprentice. Each of them have stories involving being alone in some way and finding comfort and belonging. The number one thing that all teenagers have in common. In the comics, the Teen Titans are heroes first and teenagers second, whereas Young Justice is teenagers first and heroes second. It creates a different tone and mindset between their stories. The show doesn't respect the source material, nor respects itself. The third season comes across as fanfiction, and the fourth is straight up fanfiction. The third season pushes the characters that were the main focus from the first two seasons aside for characters that might as well be OCs. Let's compare Forager. In the show, Forager is a very timid bug person from New Genesis. In the comics, he's a new god that was raised by the bug people from New Genesis. He had to prove himself to his own people because they viewed him as lesser for being raised by those they viewed as lesser. It would have made a very compelling story about racism and perception. Neither he nor his successor were ever Teen Titans or members of Young Justice. One episode was a fanfic about Green Lantern, the animated series. They even went with his fandom design instead of any official art from the original show. We made an entire video about why this fandom is wrong about his hair. They made him younger, act out of character, and heaped unnecessary trauma onto his backstory that didn't fit his psychology, behavior, or history. The only reason this episode worked was because people liked Razor, and that was it. An episode made from fanfiction from another show about another show very rarely works. Just watch the Man from U.N.C.L.E. fanfic A-Team episode if you want to see an example, another bad example. A crossover can work, but only if both shows are given equal respect and quality writing. Sometimes in this show, sometimes they took random villains that the adults usually fight, like the Riddler, instead of giving them either original villains or Teen Titans villains, or Young Justice villains. Even the Teen Titans show even the 2003 Teen Titans show used actual Teen Titans villains. They had respect for their characters. The fourth season is more of a Bat Family fanfic than a Teen Titans one, having several episodes that focus heavily on the Bat Family drama. They have at least one episode all about Barbara Gordon trying to break Cassandra Cain away from Lady Shiva. 1. In the show, Barbara is crippled by Cass when she protects the Joker from her. In the comics, Barbara is already crippled when she met Cass for the first time. She had literally nothing to do with Cass's rescue. 2. They got Cass's backstory wrong. In the show, she can't talk because Lady Shiva cut her vocal cords as a child. In the comics, Cass couldn't talk because her father, David Cain, trained her in complete silence and isolation. His goal was for her only language to be body language. After she meets the Bat Family and gets her brain scrambled, she learns to talk. She only started going by Orphan in the New 52. 3. Since when does Cass or Lady Shiva use a sword? They're both martial artists that are deadlier without them. And 4, in this show, they replaced David Cain with Lady Shiva and made her extra evil for some reason. The problem with this is the fact that Lady Shiva in the comics could care less. Her whole shtick is that she's looking for a fight. She's offended by bodyguards and she trains people like Cass, Tim, and The Question just so she can challenge them to a fight to the death later on. She's the very definition of chaotic neutral. Her only involvement in Cass's life was to give birth to her, train her after she lost her skills, and challenge her to a death match. Nothing else. Her fight with Tim ended with him poisoning her chocolate because he knew he was going to lose in a fair fight. Plus, Damien's a baby. Why is he a baby? He should be about 8 or 9. How is Tim supposed to throw hands with him if he's not old enough to become Robin? Serious and dramatic scenes and dialogue fall into common bad fanfiction tropes. Coming off as unnatural as they're written to have the absolute worst possible thing happen even if it makes no sense to do so, and especially if it's completely unnecessary. Even the more lighthearted ones come off as unnatural because of the way those scenes are written. By definition, anything made by someone outside of the original source is fanfiction. Tiny Titans is shown to be canon to the source material, being a children's cartoon of comics. Good fanfiction can sometimes be retroactively brought into the canon source material by the creators of the source material. The Timverse continuity appeared as Earth 12 in the Countdown to Final Crisis. These are written with love and respect for the source material while also telling their own stories. Batman, the animated series, and 2003 Teen Titans. Weird fanfiction can get really far from canon but still be enjoyed by the audience. Gotham is a great example. We couldn't stop laughing at how melodramatic it was, to the point of it making Bruce look normal. Black leather everywhere, lighting so dark you can't see anything, everybody knows everybody, convoluted dialogue, and nobody's the right age. It's fun because it's obvious fanfiction made by someone who loves the source but doesn't care about continuity. This fanfiction is often ignored by the source material. Bad fanfiction is often avoided, ignored, separated, or decanonized by the source material. 2 examples are Transformers Robots in Disguise 2015 and the Young Justice cartoon. The Transformers RID comics claim themselves canon to the show until the show decanonized it through one character, Bulkhead. The Young Justice show was separated from the canon by having their own comics that have no ties to any other comics, resulting in 2 completely different Earth 16s. Bad fanfiction is often taking the source material and writing it badly or using it to push a message, not tell a story. Typically told by people who don't know how to write a good one. Then there's the recent trend of hate or spite fiction. This is where the writers either take a popular IP that they hate and change every aspect of it to fit their worldview, or the writers actively hate the original characters and go out of their way to punish them. These often backlash from the audience because it's recognized for what it is, a work without love or care. The writers and producers often make the writers and producers often making excuses for their poor choices or blaming the fans when it fails. Take the rings of power and Teen Titans Go. The good versus bad fanfiction can be exemplified by Forager from Young Justice and Harley Quinn from Batman the Animated Series. Forager is a character that is canon to the comics but was changed so drastically he became an OC. Harley Quinn was an OC so well written she became canon. Part of the reason the 2003 Teen Titans worked was because it didn't have Batman in it. The story was focused entirely on the Titans and their dynamics. Young Justice could have been great, but it missed so many points. There are a lot of reasons why someone might or might not like this show. They might or might not prefer the comics. Some people might even be wishing that they stopped after the second season. If the studio wanted Teen Titans, then they should have called it Teen Titans Unlimited or something, probably making it a sequel to the 2003 show. Instead, by taking the name Young Justice, it takes away the chance for a Young Justice show that's actually based on the comics to even happen. If they wanted Young Justice, they should have made Young Justice. They've proven that they don't respect the source material or their own characters and story, instead focusing on the wrong characters and terrible dialogue. Some fanfiction is really good. Some have terrible spelling and weird pacing but a good story, and some have poorly thought out story but well written characters. But there are a lot of poorly written, paced, and thought out stories out there. The problem comes when the terrible fanfiction writers are the ones writing the stories that become someone else's fanfiction. Hollywood is full of writers right now that have been taking writing classes but have no life experience or self-awareness, which is, and believe me, a little self-awareness does go a really long way. Plus, a lot of the professional writers are being ignored right now for DEI prospects, anti-audience sentiment, and AI. So you know that most of what's going to come out is going to make the Young Justice show look better by comparison. I'm no longer writing fanfiction, and hope to one day write a movie or show. But I want to improve my skills so I don't end up doing what I've been complaining about or worse.
I'm an adult!
We think that casting Jason Marsden as Impulse was perfect, except that it was the wrong Impulse. He says that his favorite character that he's done was Chester McBadbat from the Fairly OddParents, and that kind of energy is exactly what Impulse should have been.
Okay, if I can't eat the deer, maybe I could just hang out with the cream puffs. I bet they have food.
Tim has been disrespected as a character in every movie and show that he's ever been in. His costume has been in more things than he has. Honestly, New Earth Tim deserves better. And that's what we got. Bye! Come and like and subscribe. Don't be rude and mean. Bye!